So this audio is going to be about how I feel about the Karate Kid movies 1 through 3. Um, First three had Ralph Macchio and Pat Morita as Daniel LaRusso and Mr. Miyagi. First one involves Ralph's character Daniel moving from New Jersey to California. His mother is being transferred and having a different job, so they have to relocate. He himself is not comfortable with it. He goes to school. He runs into a rich girl named Allie. She is in the midst of a breakup with her boyfriend Johnny, played by William Z. And Johnny sees that Allie has another guy come in, and he's not too happy about it because he really wants to work out the relationship he has with Allie. Allie doesn't want it because she doesn't want to put up with him or his group of friends, so she breaks it off. Daniel interferes and tries to save her from getting picked on by him. Daniel gets beat up by Johnny, and then it escalates because Johnny includes his friends in picking on Daniel, and Daniel trying to resort to protecting himself, but not knowing how to go about doing it, and he wasn't too sure. So he starts, doing karate moves from a book. Mr. Miyagi comes in to fixes his faucet, and he says, "Are you learning from a book?" He's like, "Yeah, I did it, at the YMCA for a couple of years." And he's like, "Oh, okay." So he just goes about fixing the faucet. Then Daniel gets invited to a Halloween party at the school dance, and he doesn't really want to be seen by Johnny or Johnny's group of friends because he knows if he goes over there, he's going to get jumped and get beat up. So he goes as a shower, and he sees Allie, and she says, "Well, I'm sorry I got involved in it. I know it wasn't my place, but I don't want them picking on you. I'm sorry for doing that." And he's like, "Well, you don't need to worry. It's fine. It's okay." And then Daniel proceeds to go into the men's bathroom and get them back by getting them all wet. Johnny's in there rolling a joint, wanting to get high but not wanting to get caught because he knows if he gets caught, it's the end of his senior year at high school. So Daniel goes in and gets the water and gets them all wet. They go in and they start chasing him. He lives right next to the school, so he's able to go from the school right to his house. He gets to the place where he can finally get in, but he sees that it's locked, and he tries to jump over the fence, and then he ends up getting his ass kicked by Johnny and his friends. Mr. Miyagi steps in and kicks their ass, a 4-on-1, 5-on-1 type thing, and they all get their ass kicked. Then Cobra Kai goes over to their sensei to notify their sensei that they just got their ass beat. Mr. Miyagi then goes to the leader of the Cobra Kais and says, "Look, I have a request. I want you and your students to leave Daniel alone so that he can train." And their sensei is like, "What for?" He's like, "Well, I want to train Daniel, but I need the students to lay off of him for a bit." And he's like, "Well, what else do you want?" And he's like, "Well, in order for me to train him for this tournament, they can't touch him." And he's like, "Okay." And then their sensei gave them the order, "Don't touch Daniel until the tournament. Is that understood?" And they said, "Yes, sensei." And then Daniel got mad because he figured Mr. Miyagi got him into a debauchery that he couldn't get out of. He's like, "I just saved you from getting a 2-month beating. I'm trying to help you out, and I want you to take this seriously. If you want me to train you, I'll do it, but please don't ask me questions." And so Mr. Miyagi has Daniel clean his cars, with soap and water, and the wax on, wax off, paint the fence, paint the house. Daniel gets all upset because he's being asked to do all this, not knowing it's part of the karate techniques he's being taught. So after being told or being asked to paint the house, Daniel finally flips out and says, I paint your fence, I paint your house, I clean your cars, I do this and that and the other, and this is supposed to be karate. It's not karate training. So Mr. Miyagi got fed up with his attitude and showed him, show me paint the fence. Daniel tries to show him paint the fence. No, 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 no. Do it again. So he went to go do it, and Mr. Miyagi made an attack, and Daniel blocked it. He showed me sand the floor, and he's showing him how to sand the floor. And there was another attack. Mr. Miyagi showing him all these techniques, doing different things, and Daniel didn't see it for what it was, and he wasn't paying attention. So after he took the lesson, Mr. Miyagi always, he said, you always look in the eyes. Always look in the eyes. And he got upset with him, but he was knocking him off his high horse because he thought that, Daniel being Mr. Big Shot. And so from there on out, Daniel went and did training. He was falling in love with Allie. Johnny was trying to get Allie back. Allie's parents didn't like the fact that she was dating Daniel, and they wanted her to be back with Johnny, and she said no. Johnny tried to make a move on Allie, and Daniel didn't see that Johnny got slapped in the face, and so him and Allie got in a fight. And she said, well, he thought he was being used or, mistreated, and he let her know that, and she's like, well, I didn't go out with you because of, where you live or what kind of car you drive, I thought you'd be different from everybody else. And he's like, yeah, we're different from me being from Reseda, you being from the hills. That's how we're different. And so he got mad, not knowing that she had slapped Johnny after Johnny tried to kiss her, was kissing her. And so they made up and went to the tournament. He made it all the way through, then got injured by one of the members of Cobra Kai, and then had his knee worked on a little bit and won the tournament. Part 2 is where he goes from being in California, going from California to Okinawa with Mr. Miyagi. He gets to learn about Mr. Miyagi's heritage and where he came from. He gets involved in a lifelong feud between Mr. Miyagi and Sato. And Sato still saw Mr. Miyagi as a coward because he felt that Mr. Miyagi wasn't going to fight. Mr. Miyagi didn't want to fight because he didn't see that as a means to it solving anything, so he left, knowing full well he would leave Yuki behind because Yuki had been betrothed or promised to Sato, but she didn't love Sato, so therefore she didn't take him up on his proposal and stayed single for the rest of her life because she still loved Miyagi. They come to the point where Miyagi loses his father to illness. Daniel then sees how they grieve when they lose a loved one, but then he himself is confronted with the way how he lost his dad, and it made him feel guilty because he felt like he wasn't there enough for his father. But I guess that had, given him closure in some way. And so, as, the movie progresses, he falls in love with Kumiko and forgets all about Allie. Of course, Allie had dated him and then ditched him for a football player, and Kumiko fell in love with Daniel, but she wanted to become a dancer. She's like, I want to be a dancer. That's what I really want to do, and that's what my dream is. And he's like, well, don't they have that here where you're at? And she's like, no, it would be in the States. And so he, they were talking about him leaving Okinawa after Daniel having had a fight with Chozen, because Chozen saw Daniel as a threat, and so they left, and he wanted to tell Kumiko goodbye, but they changed their mind because Mr. Miyagi was again brought in to the fold with the feud with him and Sato over Yukie. And so Sato challenged Mr. Miyagi to a fight, and finally Mr. Miyagi said, okay, you win. Let's settle it. So they try to settle it, but a storm comes about, and Kumiko has a tea ceremony that she wanted to do for somebody, with somebody. Daniel ended up taking that person's place, and then they end up doing their own tea ceremony and end up falling in love. Daniel saves the little girl from the storm, who had to ring the bell to notify the village of the storm approaching. He in turn is invited to their dance that they do every year to honor the dead, which then turns into a physical fight between him and Chozen, which is a life or death situation. So Daniel fights to death, chooses, out of the kindness of his heart, to let Chozen live rather than die. And the second one ends with him hugging Kumiko and winning the fight. The third one, which I wasn't too keen on, is basically going back to where number one started at. They come back from Japan, and they try to pick up the pieces because everything's in shambles, and Daniel's mom has to go take care of Uncle Louis because Uncle Louis is sick. Daniel wanted to do the tournament again, but Mr. Miyagi said, no, I don't want to do this anymore. I've already done it once. I'd like to retire and do something else. Daniel gets persuaded to do it by Terry Silver, not knowing full well that Terry Silver is being coached by John Kreese. And so they reform Cobra Kai, but with a different person, to try and coax Daniel into doing the tournament. Daniel goes against Mr. Miyagi to try and say, well, I want to do it. Since you're not going to train me, I'm going to have somebody else do it. So he went to Terry Silver and got trained different techniques by Terry Silver. And, Daniel didn't feel bad about it. But then Daniel did something to a guy when he went to a dance party or something, went down dancing with Jessica, and actually punched somebody in the face. And Jessica was like, what happened to you? She got mad at him because he punched somebody because Terry told him to do it. He did it, and then he felt like an asshole. And then Daniel was hoping to build a romantic relationship with Jessica, but Jessica already had a boyfriend from where she had been previously, and she was going to go back to be with him. So she left Daniel to be by himself. And then we see the reuniting of Daniel and Miyagi, reteaming to do the final tournament. Daniel goes through with the tournament, ends up getting his ass kicked, but ends up winning the final round and becomes a 2-time champion. And it's the last time we see Daniel and Miyagi together on screen. As I look back at number 3, it leaves me with tons of nostalgia. It wasn't my most favorite one. I can say 1 and 2 were my most favorite ones that were done. I love 1 and 2. I'm glad they're doing Cobra Kai. It's, it brings in a whole new generation of fans. New people get to see it. Children that were children in the 80s, 84, 85, 86, are now grown adults that have children and grandkids of their own. They get to pass this on to their children. So their children get to see what the craze was all about. And now it's come full circle, and we're being reintroduced to the whole Karate Kid franchise. I will cover the 4th one in a separate video. This one, I figured I'd just give my thoughts on how I feel about the movies, particularly the 1 through 3. Number 4 will be covered later. So that's going to be my 2 cents on that. The next video I do is going to be about the Saw franchise and what I think of the new installment, Spiral, from the Book of Saw. Alright? Thanks for listening.